Moshe, come to me.
Elohim, 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 Abraham, Elohim, Yitzhak, Elohim, Yaakov.
Baruch Hashem, and welcome to my home. This is ben-Emmett again. Another exciting edition of the Torah Watchman Show. Now, LLC for Limited Liability Corporation. We're getting to the big time. Yes, we have the international audience. Yeah, welcome to everyone from Uganda, everyone from Andhra Pradesh, India. Thank you, people all over the world and up in Sweden and Norway, in those areas too, and I have ancestry there too, another story some other time. Anyway, thank you for all the no-hides there, growing that audience there. Yeah, this rabbi, this is a Hasidic Jew here, cares so much about you. I really do. Or I wouldn't spend all this research for all this entertaining study in the Torah, right? I have a precious jewel for you. Let's drink my hat. You like my hat right here? Yeah, it's taken from the Talmud, at least one of the major sages between the 11th and 12th century by the name of Nachmanides. He also, a shorter name, is known as Ramban. Don't get him confused with Maimonides or Rambam, okay? Occasionally, several years ago, when I was getting to know unique personalities of these various sages, you know, like Rashi, Nachmanides, Maimonides, others, Johannes and others, Rabbi Akiva, trying to get used to them as people that I actually welcome my home. I have their pictures, I have their portraits. Some of them are drawings, some of them are artistic in scope. Anyway, I haven't posted in my dining room because, yes, I don't agree with everything that they have to say. But, you know, I do respect them because if they did not form the virtual Sanhedrin that they did, you know, establishing the Gemara and final rules of arbitration of Jewish law, the Shulchan Aruch, all of these things, if they didn't have group consensus of some sort of authority there or perceived to be authority figures during the muddiest times of human history during the Middle Ages and on, we would not be Jews as we are today. I mean, they were the super glue that kept Jews from flying apart. They established Hebrew. They established Masoretic text. They established educating much of the ignorant populace during that time. Kudos to Rambam, Maimonides, who wrote the Midrash, Torah, you know, the exposition of the 5 books of Torah in a commentary kind of form and an extrapolation and a debate kind of oral tradition kind of thing, very precisely. I have his books too. But, you know, Nachmanides is actually a legend too. He actually lived, he was born at the same time that Maimonides, you know, was pretty much had already written the Midrash or Mishnah Torah at that time, and they were, I would say, contemporaries of very much different ages, of course, and they actually got along. Nachmanides was well known by being very opinionative about a subject of this Torah Watchman show is why do rabbis add so many laws to the Torah? What we're talking about is fences. Now, Nachmanides went into detail about fences. And, you've heard stories that walls and fences make good neighbors. Well, think about Mount Sinai. We're getting ready to celebrate Shavuot in a few days, ending the cycle of counting Omer, 50 days. God had told the Israelis at that time, for you protect yourself, do not come near the mountain. There is a boundary point between the mundane and the sacred, holy part of God, where his nefesh is interacting with the mountain at a quantum level. And he said, put a fence in front of the foot of the mountain to make sure no animals wander there and no people, more importantly, wander there, or they would die. They would die. Doesn't matter how clean they were. It doesn't matter how much they prayed. It's just at that time, God was just impacting the world in the Mount Sinai region, in that desert region, in a way that was so supernatural that it still chills us to the bone to think about the King of the universe setting his throne temporarily upon the mountaintop, speaking to us, blowing a shofar to get our attention. Where am I going? There was a fence around the perimeter of the mountain that helped to protect people from accidentally chasing after a sheep or goat or something and then running across that boundary and dying. Okay? So when you think about a fence, I think about that. But this is something of a great subject and debate today. Okay? We have the 613 mitzvot. A majority of them, I would say, is the book of Vayikra. The rest of them are in the book of Bamidbar, and a summary of all those rest of them is in Davarim, in those major books. Of course, some of the holidays and everything else, like Pesach and everything, was established in the book of Shemot, Exodus as well. But a majority of them are in Vayikra and Bamidbar. It seems like, people ask me all the time, don't Jews have too many rules? Well, it seems like that way, right? But we know we are under the government of God, of Shamaim. We're not so much under the government of the secular world. Yes, we have to abide as good stewards in the diaspora, as exiled Jews in various countries. I'm in the United States of America. And you have to respect the governors and presidents and district and court system and police officers and teachers and other public people. It's just respectful to do that, right? But beyond all of that, we are under God's laws, and that's codified in the 613 mitzvot. Now, the 613 mitzvot were not made up by rabbis or sages, unless you consider Moshe as Moshe Rabbeinu as the chief architect of all rabbinical authority. Maybe so, and that's debatable too. But anyway, we have the 613 mitzvot. I have them, actually, most of them, codified and broken out in picture frames and hanging throughout my house at different portals, different places, into my bedroom, into the living room and other places in the house, hallways, balcony, things of this nature, to remind me to read them and consult them, okay? They're very, very important. So we have the 10 Commandments, and extrapolated from that is the 613 mitzvot. That essentially is the cornerstone of Shulchan Aruch, which is our Jewish code, a Jewish legal system, okay? Now, what people have asked me is about, isn't it forbidden to add or take away anything from the Torah? I mean, didn't Moshe ad nauseum tell the Jewish people, the Hebrews of his time, tribal Israel, that the Torah is not out of reach of you? It's not impossible to access or to gain. It's not up in the heavens someplace, the mountaintop. It's not in a valley. It's not lost in the deepest ocean. It is there for you in your midst right now, and you can do it. Now, he was very clear in the Torah about the legal system of that day in tribal Israel. We debate today, some of those mitzvot do not apply to us anymore because we don't live in Eretz Israel. Majority of Jews live outside of Israel. And of course, there's no temple anymore. We refused to build a temple since 1967 when we had the opportunity for whatever political reason, I don't know. But I'm saying about 230 something, maybe 233 or more mitzvot, we could just simply cannot keep. And then, it's a gamble even celebrating Passover because you're supposed to celebrate these holidays in Israel, like the Feast of Fruits, which essentially Shavuot coming up as a more modern term to refer to an old tribal tradition or holiday that we simply cannot celebrate in the same way that tribal Israel did, because we have not been saving barley grain and shafts of wheat and things of that nature. The omer is the weighted of that grain amount. We have not been saving that in baskets and all that to bring to the temple, ultimately to the master storehouse for the temple treasury for sacrifice, a grain offering. We don't have that. So we have to make rules and laws to compensate that. Most of that is given to tzedakah, and most of that is davening 3 times a day, which is through the tradition of the prophet Daniel, okay? A Shachri's prayer, a Mincha prayer, or Avrit prayer in the evening. Now, a question again posed to Chabad, and it's posed to me too, is about the scenario of Adam and Eve, okay? This Adam and Eve, or Havilah, as in Hebrew. Eve is not actually in the Torah, in Genesis, in Bereshit. So they asked the question about the sin that led the fall of Adam and Havilah, because God gave clear laws and regulations and commandments of all the other trees of the field you could eat and partake of, the fruit of the tree, except for one tree, with the tree of knowledge and good and evil. The serpent story, I'm not going to go into all of that, but Havilah knew those rules, and but she put her trust in something other than God, and essentially profaned the image of Hashem and made a god the representation of the serpent, because the serpent had more authority at that time, at that brief moment of indiscretion in which she partook and looked upon that fruit. It was not an apple, it was some delicious fruit. Hashem said, don't even look at it, don't think about it, don't allow yourself to be seduced about that. This is where Nachmanides says, and I agree with his premise, what he says here. Nachmanides, again, he lived from about 1194 to 1270, between the 11th and 12th century. Contemporary of the Rambam. He was the Ramban. Yeah, you have to pronounce those separately. The book you see here is my Talmud, one of these editions here, and Nachmanides and Maimonides, both of these rabbis of blessed memory, are mentioned here predominantly as far as our commentary. There was a lot of discussion in the Middle Ages about all the increase in additions of laws and legalism and everything else by the dispersed court system, the Jewish court. We have the heavenly court, we have the earthly court. The Sanhedrin, went offline, 2,000 years ago when it was broken apart by the Roman Empire. But anyway, we did the best we could. The Nachmanides pointed out to a lot of the heresiers, saying, why are you adding laws here? Who are you? Are you Moshe? Are you a prophet? Why are you judging over us? Why are you telling us to do these things when it's not spelled out in the 613 mitzvot? 613 mitzvot, folks, is very detailed. There's those positive and negative commandments in there. So why do we need anything else extrapolated from other than the 613 mitzvot, when I just told you, living in a diaspora, we can't keep all of them, okay? Well, you know how men are, unlike women, and I'll be delicate when I say this, men have more problem with sexual sin than women. It's medically provable. It's a biological fact of hormones and everything else. Don't want to get into it. But I'm saying even married men have a problem with other women compared to married women have a problem with other men that are not their husbands. You see what I'm saying? So what Nachmanides say, build fences around your life to keep you from being seduced and breaking one of the 613 mitzvot. Okay, that's just the way he's saying. Well, you could say this is common sense. We're all adults here, and we don't need rules and legalism over me and strapping and all these trappings of you shall do this, you shall not do that. It's almost like you're treating an adult man like as a child. When you're reading the Talmud, very superstitious. You don't want to be called in a ruin, for instance, because people may think that you're going to, find a woman of the night, a harlot or whatever, or there's an evil spirit there, or the ruin may just collapse. You should not go there. People may see you going there and then think you're doing something nefarious when you're actually not doing anything wrong. You may just be curious. You may be interested in that ruin, from an architectural standpoint, right? But anyway, that's just one thing. Of course, the other examples are ad nauseum. I mean, like the size of my dining room here, the size of my table is actually in the Talmud. It's specified the minimal size and dimensions of that in order to have Passover. Believe it or not. Also, the prohibitions for even married people. Women have their menstrual cycles, once a month up into, they reach menopause, and this is called Nida and things like that. And it's very delicate, and some rabbis even ask proof for the women that you finished, through with a bleeding cycle and all that. Women have different biology than other women. They have different hormones and everything else, and not all women are created equal. They have other issues. Sometimes, family planning and all that is impeded because of a woman's irregular cycle. I don't want to get on this. I'm just saying to build fences around all of this, of rules of uncleanliness. Rabbis have recommended, women and men, even married, should sleep in separate bed. And in our home, I respect that tradition, okay? Also, in Orthodoxy, you may hear about women wearing wigs, married women wearing wigs. Some women actually shave their heads after a ritual after they get married. Why? Because that hair belongs to the world, and when she grows out a new hair, that belongs to her husband, and she has a wig on. Well, Miriam did not have a wig on her head. There's no examples throughout the Torah of women wearing wigs and things like that. Very hot in the desert, you can imagine this. And a lot of the wigs aren't even truly kosher. I mean, really not. But, we have these things. Also, when we have Yom Tov and holidays and things like that, we kind of build it up more every year. And I'm for that. What I'm trying to say is that Nachmanides was right, and he was not quite right. Where I'm going is that he said you should have fences around your life. And he's speaking, 99% about men, because men get into more foolishness than women do. They just aren't. They're not a steady state, psychologically speaking, than women. And I think a lot of these prohibitions were put upon men as far as when you pass a woman on the street, you look down or look in the sky and everything else. You don't greet them. You don't talk to them. You don't want to be found in another woman's apartment or something. You leave the door open. You have to be very discreet about this. It's just about being a gentleman, right? But it's also about containing a man's animal inhibitions. Then you put these prohibitions on women so that they are considered seducers and not the men, by wearing wigs and things like that and sitting separately in the shul. I'm not arguing with this. I'm just saying these are not detailed in the 613 mitzvot. Why? Because God didn't think they would be critically important, neither for the generation of Moshe and Aaron and Miriam, or the future generations, for today. They were not in there. Of course, you could say the mezuzah was not in the Torah. The tzezit, as far as the blue and white cords and all that, are not called out in those names. Shavuot and other names like that, Hanukkah, they're not listed in there, but they're trying to say they're interpreted, or they are exposed through discovery and things of that nature. And the intent, because I like to say commander intent, because I'm military, the intent did not change. Like lighting Shabbos candles is not in the Torah, but we do this anyway because we like to think of the temple menorah. Okay? So you have indirect and direct connections back to 613 mitzvot. At the same time, you have all these fences that rabbis Not today per se, because most of these major decisions were made in the Middle Ages, and we have to stick to it. For instance, there's a first century rabbi, not Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was born of convert. He's the one that decided, he, and not a prophet of Israel, decided that if you're born of a Jewish father, you're no longer considered a Jew exclusively. You have to be born of a Jewish mother. It doesn't matter if you're Gentile. So they made up these rules here, okay? They had reason during that time, okay? Warfare, there were not many men around. They wanted to preserve the Jewry, the populations and things of this nature. It is what it is. The thing is, you can make these fences to protect our animal inhibitions. I'm all for fences. I'm all about controls and boundaries, parental guidance for my daughter and things like that. My wife and I, we put these prohibitions around us to minimize, lashon hara, people thinking we're doing something when we're not, and all these accusations. These are good, but rabbis have no right to judge you for anything that's not in the 613 mitzvah. That's what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. I got in discussion with a lady, Orthodox lady, about work prohibitions on Shavuot. Did you know Shavuot is limit? It's not a high holiday. It's a 2-day holiday, and you are allowed to do limited work. Even though it's discouraged to do anything other than reading the Torah. If you're a man, you're supposed to start reading the Torah and the Talmud all night, beginning Thursday evening or the night before Shavuot. Well, you're allowed. If you're a woman, you're allowed to cook. You're allowed to clean, wash dishes, limited washing clothes, flush your toilet, clean up a mess on the floor. This is. You can talk to my wife. This is considered work, but that kind of work is okay. Okay, that's okay. But if your truck, like mine, that is in dire need of repair, and it has to go to the garage. If it doesn't go to the garage, I have no job. Okay, what do you do? In my truck, it's all remote control. I push a button and then it goes. Okay, essentially, I go to the garage and I sit in a lobby there and I drink Starbucks coffee or something while I wait, and other people work on my truck. I don't work on my truck. But this is something is a significant life event, and it's something that I make an exception for. And does it break the heart and intent of the Shavuot as a Yom Tov, where you don't drive per se? There's scooters in Jerusalem where you can actually use as continuous motion. You put your hands on it and it goes. In other words, it's turned on before Shabbat, and so you can use them. And there's elevators too. I've seen them in Brooklyn that go up and down continuously. You can use an elevator, which is a mechanical device, electronic device. Rabbis have approved that. They also approved other types of forms of electronic devices. During COVID, Chief Rabbi says it's okay to use your mobile phone because you may have a loved one in the hospital or a situation where you need to check on them as an emergency. These can be wavered, and the 50 shades of gray. The thing is, when you make so many rules and set up so many fences and so much legalism, and then some rabbis, not all of them, let them go to their head and they judge you, they form a negative opinion of you, and others that support their legalistic view judges you well, that is wrong. As I said, Nachmanides, he was right about setting up fences and boundaries in our life. I mean, we have laws in our country, right? You don't go to jail for committing adultery, but you break a major mitzvah if you do commit adultery at a Jewish marriage. You do. Abusing your child, abusing your wife, all these things. We have civil laws in our country. These are fences. Do we need more fences? And does it, in the end, strangle the Jewish quality of life? Wrapping it up and reading this conclusion here, if you ever hear from someone that says you cannot, and we hear this from Christians all the time, you cannot add to the good book, you can't subtract the good book. It's in Davarim. It says it twice at least, okay? You cannot, and it's a great prohibition. You should never ever add to the word of God, period. It's a closed canon. I mean, the last prophet spoke, and that's it. There's no more prophets. These sages, like Nachmanides and others, Rabbi Akiva and Johannes and others, wonderful, beautiful people. They were not prophets of God, and they were not selected by God, per se, to speak on his behalf. They were doing the good work of being righteous tzaddiks and leading Jews in some of the most horrific and difficult times in Jewish history in the Middle Ages, okay? When, we were oppressed, anti-Semitism, issues of the Roman Catholic Church, expulsions, all this. They did everything can to keep Jewry together from flying apart, keeping the Hebrew language coherent from being lost forever. And that almost happened. Without Masoretic text, we would not probably be speaking Hebrew today. It's just what it is. Anyway, I thought you'd be interested in this. Why do sages add so many laws upon us when it's not in the Torah and it's forbidden to do that? Many people say they're temporarily added today until the Mashiach comes, and then Mashiach can rule or whatever to remove these laws and go back to the Torah. Why did you just stay with the Torah? Isn't it difficult enough to keep the 613 mitzvot as it is and leave a righteous life all the time without adding all of these other man-made rules and regulations over you? There's something to just think about. I'm an Orthodox Jew. I'm a proud Orthodox Jew. I'm a Hasidic by ancestry and my tradition. At the same time, I have an open mind and I'm a very practical Jew. And the last thing I want to do is turn any Jew or any person that wants to convert to Orthodoxy away from Orthodoxy because of these strangling rules and regulations that steal away the joy of the living Torah that should be within you. Let no one blow out that candle. This Jew is thinking about you, and I love you. Please share the knowledge and wealth and truth to everyone you can hear. I'm a lighthouse on the hill. I'm the elephant in the room. I'm not politically correct. I shoot from the hip. You get the inconvenient truth from me. If I'm wrong, I will retract what I'm saying, and I will do a special podcast or video and say I was wrong. I gave you my opinion here, and I also articulated the opinions and the explanation from Chabad as well. That's where I got my article from, and also reading throughout my Talmud and getting to know the nature and personalities of these sages. God bless you. Shalom Aleichem. Rabbi ben-Emmett signing out. Please remember to subscribe and personal notify. And I'll see you real soon.